Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, July 14th. Holland Squallen, Quistukmet, Squamish, Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation and are incredibly lucky to do so. We have council, if you haven't made your way into the meeting, if you could, and if you're here, please turn your camera on. So our first order of business will be to actually, please be advised this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have any concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting, which today is Victoria Ray. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And I'm just going to double check. We had Councillor Stoner participating remotely for part today. I don't see her in the meeting at this point, so just a note to the minute taker to keep an eye on if Councillor Stoner joins. So now we'll be on to item. So we're on to our first item, which is development permit 656 for 1415 Aspen Road. We'll turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and run us through the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Philip Gibbons, planner with Community Development, and I have Robin Hay, Manager of Current Planning here. And I also have Jay Stanino from Development Engineer to answer any engineering related questions. This afternoon, I'll be presenting a development permit for 1415 Aspen Road, formerly known as Lot 15 in the North Yards neighbourhood. So this is Council's second time seeing this proposal. It was recently rezoned to a comprehensive development zone to facilitate this specific development. The subject site is an irregularly shaped lot on the corner of Aspen Road and Pioneer Way, as I mentioned, in the North Yards neighbourhood. It's currently undeveloped and is approximately 8,500 square metres in size. To the north is future Pioneer Way connection, northwest proposed government supportive and affordable housing project. The west is proposed rezoning at Lot 14 Aspen, and to the east and south is vacant Crown land. This site currently has no road access and is located on the future Pioneer Way extension, an unconstructed section of Aspen Road. To gain access to the development, the applicant will be required to complete Pioneer Way to their site and build out the Aspen Road frontage. And these will be secured through a servicing agreement. This development permit seeks to establish the form and character of a 6-story mixed-use rental building. It includes 153 apartments and a 390 square metre commercial unit for a childcare and 10 live-work units. All of these units, including the live-work units, will be secured through a housing agreement, which has been included in the agenda for bylaw readings. The first story will be elevated against partially underground story containing bicycle and vehicle parking, the solid waste storage. The first habitable level includes the childcare space, live-work units, an indoor amenity room, and some residential units. The upper levels contain a mix of residential unit types from studios to 3 bedrooms. 23% of the units are adaptable, exceeding BC building code requirements, and there are no variances requested. The form and character of this development is to be reviewed against the Development Permit Area 3 Universal Guidelines. So this building is contemporary architectural character and includes high quality durable materials, including corrugated metal, fiber cement lap siding and panels. color palettes, contemporary, vibrant accents, and wood tone soffits. And this design meets development permit 3 guidelines related to context, character, siting, orientation, relationship, building with the streets, building form, massing, and variation, building roofscape, building materials, and colors. Landscape elements include native and sustainable drought-resistant planting and naturalized features, and plantings have been chosen that are not wildlife attractants and that are wildfire resistant. And the design of the outdoor area for the childcare space will be completed by the operator of that space at that time. And a fulsome review of this against the guidelines was attached to the report to council, and staff consider that the guidelines have been met. Vehicle and bicycle access is provided from Aspen Road to the south, which is on the left side of the screen. Accessible parking has been provided near the building's entrance ramp, and bicycle parking externally at the entrance for residents and within the parkade. Accessible pedestrian access to the building is provided from the parking areas, as well as from Aspen Road and the proposed neighbourhood park. And in lieu of open space on site, the applicant has agreed to build a neighbourhood pocket park on the adjacent plan, which is shown at the top of this slide. And the park design will be established through and secured through servicing agreement. This proposal was presented to the advisory design panel at the February meeting. The panel were supportive of the design, but provided comments as follows: to create more usable open space and improve pedestrian connections, improve visibility of the Squamish vernacular, improve functionality for childcare, drop-off and parking locations, reduce the busyness of massing, update the color palette, provide more roofline variation, change the massing to reduce the appearance of length, enhance the central plaza to create a new feature, a number of suggested accessibility improvements, and other minor comments on materials, and some comments related to the proposed park. So the applicant did make a number of updates to address the comments. Staff are of the opinion that the applicant has successfully addressed ADP comments. The items, there were limited options for addressing comments related to massing and roofline variation. However, some updates have been made, and the full response from the applicant was attached to the report to council. Notification of a development sign was placed on site and the project listed on the development review page on the district website. There were no requests for project information meeting or comments from the public. If approved, staff will issue the development permit subject to conditions being met, and other permits will be need to be obtained prior to construction, including building permit, service agreement, and soil permit. And finally, the recommendation is, as the proposal is consistent with the Development Permit Area 3 guidelines, staff recommend that council authorise the issuance of the development permit subject to conditions, and that the associated housing agreement bylaw be given 3 readings. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, questions? Or a motion if we're there. I don't have any hands for questions. So if someone is ready to move recommendation or requires a question for it, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Are you seconding that, Councillor French? Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. This is a development permit. And so I think this is if staff are satisfied with the satisfaction of the guidelines. I'm also satisfied with the guidelines. I see there are some places where guidelines are either not applicable or maybe on the edge. But I think by and large, this application meets the guidelines of our DPA. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor French, then Pettingill.
Yeah, we've seen this a few times, and this is consistent with all of our previous direction. And I love that this gets us close to back on schedule for our timing in this meeting.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm looking to support this. I believe I voted against this at the rezoning. I had concerns about understanding the risk from the pipeline adequately, which I still have, and some concerns about the employment space versus residential space. But those are not. Those were appropriate considerations for the rezoning. This is just about the DPA conditions, and I concur with staff's assessment that this is consistent with the DPA guidelines. So for those reasons, I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, as others have said, this is a development permit, and it's about whether this proposal meets the guidelines or not, and it does. I do want to highlight that the letter attached from the architect and on behalf of the proponent, just, to me, shows just the amount of attention to detail that both the advisory design panel and the proponent have gone through to address these things, and it's great to see that piece of our complex puzzle of development, doing its job and improving the end product to the point where these can be much simpler discussions at council. So thank you to the folks on ADP and the proponent and their team for being so reactive and evolving as this as concerns come forward and addressing them. So makes it easy to support from the seat that I'm sitting in here. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Greenlaw opposes. Motion carries. Thank you so much. So next we have a development permit 655 for 37495 Innovation Avenue. And I will turn it over to staff when you're ready to take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Planner with Community Development. With me is Robin Hay, Manager of Current Planning. I will now be presenting development permit number 655, which proposes to establish the form and character of a mixed-use development on Lot O at the oceanfront. At the July 7th, 2026 regular council meeting, the oceanfront Lot O density clarification amendments to the zoning bylaw and the phase development agreement bylaw were adopted. These amendments removed a 207 rental housing unit limit from the density regulations. The density is now only regulated by the 1.15 floor area ratio maximum, and this allowed for an additional 42 rental units to be included in the development proposed under DP 655. The subject site is located at the southwest corner of the oceanfront peninsula. It is bound by the Cattermole Slough, the Squamish terminals, the Carbon Engineering Demonstration Center to the north, and 3 undeveloped parcels to the southeast, including approved development permits for an office building and for a mixed-use building with commercial at grade. The proposed development is subject to Development Permit Area 11, Protection from Wildfire Hazard, and Development Permit Area 12, Oceanfront Peninsula Guidelines. This development permit application seeks to establish the form and character of a mixed-use development consisting of 5 4-story buildings with 6,632 square meters of light industrial space at grade and 249 market rental units above, and a 2-story building containing a childcare facility with capacity for 49 children and a 93 square meter community art space. The project meets the requirements of the CD 69 zone and the phase development agreement. Building height is 15 meters for the 5 mixed-use buildings and 8 meters for the childcare facility and community art space. The floor area ratio is 1.1. Access is provided by 2 drive aisles from Innovation Avenue. A ramp to the underground parkade is located on the northwest corner of the internal drive aisle beside Building B. 83 surface parking stalls are provided, and 296 stalls are located in the parkade, meeting the requirements of the CD69 zone. Class A bicycle parking stalls are provided in the parkade, and a shared waste room is provided in Building C, adjacent to the loading zone. The architectural design for the rental and light industrial buildings draws inspiration from industrial forms and material and is complemented by brightly colored balconies, accents, and graphic elements. The internal drive aisle is framed by landscaping, seating, and covered walkways. The childcare and community art space building is designed to feel distinct from the rest of the project. The childcare building's scale, materials, and shape help it integrate with Squamish Feather Park. The all-wood egg-shaped structure has 3 distinct daycare groups, and a continuous 2-meter overhang provides shelter to the exterior play spaces. Community art space is provided on the 2nd story. This space will be this space will be rented to Squamish Arts Council for 25 years at a lease rate of $1 a month. These terms will be included in a restrictive covenant registered on title. Usable open space is provided west of the buildings and will contain a 4-meter wide public pathway and associated public access right-of-way over the area. The landscape design is inspired by the Squamish estuary and its surroundings, utilizing robust industrial dimension materials and native plantings. The landscape focuses on durability and longevity. Form and character of the development is to be reviewed against DPA 12. The purpose of DPA 12 is to regulate the form and character of multi-unit commercial, mixed-use, marine, and open space development within the oceanfront peninsula area. Staff's review confirms that this project generally meets the DPA 12 guidelines. To inform the community per policy, the application was posted to the district's development review and a development sign was posted on site. No comments were received and no project information meeting was held. Given that staff's review confirms that the DPA 12 guidelines are generally met, staff are recommending DP655 be issued subject to the conditions noted on this slide, and that the associated housing agreement to secure the residential units as market rental housing be given first 3 readings. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Go ahead, Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, so in the DPA guidelines 6.7.2.7.3, energy and water conservation features that encourage solar thermal and or solar photovoltaic modules into building design on roofs or walls, and does not meet the guideline. When staff spoke to the proponent, what was the rationale for not meeting this guideline?
Through the chair, their architect and the proposed uses in the mixed-use building noted that it wouldn't be possible to incorporate it on the design in this project. Again, these are guidelines. It's not always possible to meet every guideline in for every project. So staff accepted the rationale that was provided by the proponents for not being able to meet this guideline for this proposal.
But if I might, if they can't sort of with that particular, like, wouldn't our guidelines suggest, well, you change your design so you can accommodate that? Isn't that the sort of the point of the guidelines? It informs the design as opposed to we have a design and we'll fit the guidelines, you know, like the guidelines are meant to drive the design, not the other way around. So was there any discussion about changing the design?
There were discussions, but ultimately it was determined that it wasn't viable for this project. And again, I hear what you're saying about guidelines driving the design of the project, but they are guidelines, so they're not prescriptive. You don't need to meet every single guideline. If generally the project meets all of the guidelines, then staff will support it. And obviously, if a guideline cannot be met and a proponent provides sufficient rationale associated with that, then sometimes not every guideline can be met.
Okay, so then the next item is linkage with district energy system should be provided, heating, cooling system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand we don't currently have a district energy system, but it is an expectation, I think, that buildings here are able to hook up to one if or when it happens. And it's not that if there is one, put one in when you're building. It's expect that there's one coming and design the buildings accordingly. Is that not correct? Or are we sort of just ignoring this guideline and we've somewhere written off any possibility of a district energy system?
So through the chair, I will attempt to answer this question. My understanding is there was, back in the day, this was something that was being looked at, a district energy system, particularly for the oceanfront development, and that has not moved forward in the time that I have worked here. So I don't believe there is a current plan moving forward on that, and I would look to senior Jonas to correct that.
Through the mayor, just to clarify and add to what Mr. Daly said, this requirement has to live in a subdivision development control bylaw, which regulates the building servicing. And so about 8 or 9 years ago, we did explore that possibility. And it was at that point determined that we weren't going to move forward with changes to the subdivision and development control bylaw. So that I think that guideline is a bit outdated.
Okay, so then, and I'm trying to understand if this has sufficient compliance with the guidelines, because in that sort of summary, one of the bullets was a model of green development. And so if there's no solar photovoltaic, there's no district energy system hookups, how are we saying that this is a model of green development?
Through the chair, there is no gas provided to any of the residential units. This will meet the higher energy step codes, which is quite challenging to do in these types of mixed use buildings, particularly with a light industrial on the ground floor. Again, this project is meeting almost all of the guidelines, and it is still providing it is also providing market rental housing. Again, there's a number of items in here that are that it is meeting most of the guidelines. So while it might not meet every energy efficiency guideline, it is meeting a number of the guidelines.
Okay, I just push back once more just on this, because when I see here a model of green development, sort of big picture, if it's not solar, then I would expect wind or something. We have buildings that are signing no gas covenants for all uses, not just residential. And so I'm really struggling to understand the compliance with not just the individual guidelines, but that bigger sort of higher level piece, I guess. I suppose that's more of a comment, but.
I think this will be a piece that we can debate as council. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, are the parking spots EV ready? Do they have a plug, not a charger?
Through the mayor, they meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So stalls are EV ready, and then some stalls do have a plug. I forget what the exact percentage is off the top of my head, but it's a requirement in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, and I don't remember the zoning bylaw off the top of my head either. So is it a large fraction of the stalls or a small fraction? Do you recall?
I believe all of the stalls have to be EV ready, and then around 30% I would like to wager as my guess for having a plug. So a portion.
Perfect, thanks. And I'll also reflect that that's a rezoning decision, not a DP decision. This is a DP, so thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Anderson next.
Thank you. I wonder if staff might be able to provide me with orientation regarding Section 219 covenants that are under consideration here. We've got no fewer than 5 Section 219 covenants addressed in the staff recommendation on diversity of topics and in alignment within a couple of cases with the terms of the phased development agreement. Another Section 219 covenant that is a part of the phased development agreement is the Schedule K1, an industry covenant. And among other things, that industry covenant addresses the requirement for an acoustics report and also a statement as to how the measures recommended in a acoustics report will be incorporated into buildings. I wonder, Mr. Daly, if you can clarify where and when that is considered, if not here. Is there a specific reason why we're not listing that covenant in addition to the ones we have in the staff recommendation, as it does involve the design and facades, building envelopes, if you like, of the buildings that are under consideration today?
Through the mayor, that covenant is currently registered on title, so that will be reviewed as part of the building permit process when the specific design of the building is going through, and there's more detail on all of the materials, given that this DP is only dealing with the exterior materials that are proposed.
Mr. Daly, that's very helpful.
Council, any other questions here? I have a couple myself. One is likely for a next step, or where in the process does this get addressed? The path that goes along the west side. Sorry, I was trying to orient myself. The west side of the property. Will that be improved? That'll be improved as part of this. I think that was covered at rezoning. How do we handle the phase between here and there? As far as it's a very busy zone, we know that at other points, we've had to close that off. Is there a point in this process where like an alternate route is secured for during construction? This is sort of like assuming this advances question, or how are we thinking about that here? Yeah.
Thank you through the chair. I think the simple answer to that is that it does get determined through the servicing agreement. The path here is determined through the foreshore improvements, which is a servicing agreement and separate from this application. That being said, there is a statutory right-of-way at the north end of the site that connects up to the future roads. And so there's certainly an opportunity there to create a diversion around during construction.
Okay, thank you. I know that was a bit of a deviation, but I was trying to understand how these pieces fit together. There's one of the requirements here, or the guidelines, is regarding site lighting, and it says it partially meets guidelines, and detailed lighting plan can be to be approved as part of the building permit. So will those? It just seemed interesting. We have a piece in the DP, but it actually is maybe best handled by another process. Like, is that common for that particular guideline to be covered through something in our building permit process or some other regulation?
I would say it's fairly common for applicants to not necessarily have their detailed specifics related to site lighting established at form and character, because you're still very far out from construction at this point, and that's subject to change. So quite often, folks will note that they will be meeting the guidelines, and that these guidelines are informing the decisions for the types of lighting that they are purchasing. Because again, that's getting down to kind of finishing stage and quite a ways from where they're at in the construction process.
Okay, so our sort of dark skies, like all those principles are captured through that from your perspective.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, council? We have recommendations before us if that's where we are. Councillor French moves, Councillor Hamilton seconds. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor French?
Much like the development permit before this one, we've spent a fair amount of time on this particular property and this area. And all of this is consistent with our previous conversations, and I support everything that we've got in front of us that moves us forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton is a seconder, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I think this is broadly consistent with the DPA guidelines. I see Councillor Pettingill's friction on this sort of definition of a model of green development. I find it one of the pieces I'm juxtaposing here is a DPA that's being applied to one area of our community and not other areas. But I know that goes back into history of how this project came to be. So I want to recognize I agree that I don't think that it's meeting quite this model of green development, and could work further to do that. But it's not far enough down on that scale for me to not approve the DP in broad strokes. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
I'm not. I'm not going to be able to support this. I think for me, it's not just one or two guidelines that aren't met. It's a whole sort of higher level concept of green development. And this was meant to be, again, a model. This whole area and all the development that occurs on oceanfront is meant to be that. And when we look at the Community Climate Action Plan, the Climate Emergency Declaration, all those pieces in the OCP, these are major things. And I could, live with if we didn't meet the specifics of a guideline. So they deal with it with wind versus solar or something like that, I could live with. But it's sort of this whole big concept in an area that doesn't seem like it's being addressed adequately. And so for me, that is a deal breaker, unfortunately.
Thank you. And apologies, Councillor Anderson. I got a little twisted around there. You're next on my list.
Not at all. I find the colors of the facade that we see in the architectural information to be very refreshing. I'm delighted to see these bright colors. However, I'd like to offer further comment on the design rationale as presented by the developer's architect. There's reference to industrial forms and material and deriving inspiration from the oceanfront's industrial history. There's reference to containers and deriving inspiration from shapes and surfaces of containers. There's also, to quote, color palette is explicitly derived from shipping yard colors, a direct maritime reference. There has never been a shipping yard in Squamish, and there's never been containers in Squamish. In fact, the only building on this peninsula for 80 years was a hotel. It was a two-story hotel, and it was used as the set for a Western movie. It was a typical late Victorian timber hotel, big structure. And in fact, the industrial history of this peninsula is only 30 years, whereas that hotel and gateway and transportation function of the peninsula was 80 years, and it still is there that way today. So why I make these comments is that we should all, and we are all, striving for authenticity in our built environment design. And in fact, this developer consistently goes above and beyond in their interest shown and commitment to this, the oceanfront developer. What we're missing is a historical context statement for the oceanfront. We're going to get there eventually. But I think that we should be mindful that we're not actually being very authentic in some of what we do, despite our intentions. And I think sometimes it can be a bit of a shame. At Waterfront Landing, we've got a lot of buildings that look like waterfront warehouses. We've never had waterfront warehouses in Squamish. So I'm sorry, I have to fly the flag for historical authenticity, but at the same time, applaud the efforts ongoing of the developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the comments that Councillor Pettingill made. So that's how I'll be leaning on this.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. I think broadly this meets the guidelines, and that's the intent. And there's some that ultimately weren't viable at this site. I will say that, but on balance, I think this is supportable. We have the addition of market rental here. I think is really important. There's a need in community, as is the daycare spaces, and if there's any gap that needs bridging for me, that aspect of this more than bridges that gap for me. With one piece that I think is I'm having a challenge with the recommendation. It's not enough for me to derail this, but the the end of trip facilities, just saying it meets the guideline with the comment that commercial units will include rough-ins to allow for full washrooms is totally different than an end of trip facility provided. And whether that's in a percentage of the spaces or some other way to do it, I think leaving it to the tenant to do that piece, I find challenging for the meets the guidelines. To earn that meets the guidelines, I would say that partially meets the guidelines without actually having a commitment to that, or it could meet the guidelines. But again, at the same time, I think this is that's sufficient enough to move it forward with where we are in the process, and I hope that that those full washrooms that truly represent end of trip facilities will come to fruition in a high percentage of these units. But I think this piece deserves a little bit more look at to make sure that we're actually achieving that over time. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill and Councillor Greenlaw opposed. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay, Council, I'd be looking for a motion to close, please. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by, I will second that. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's take a break long enough to go to Fox and Oak and back. Councillor Pettingill, you're looking pretty spry. I think 15 minutes should be enough for you to get that important work done. Yeah. Okay, so we'll reconvene at 4:45.